Just when you thought you had heard the height of hypocrisy concerning college football, then came Bob Stoops, who just minutes ago said that if the Joe Mixon incident happened now instead of 2 years ago, he would have dismissed Joe Mixon. Sure you would have. I'm sure you have finally found Jesus, Bob Stoops. I'm sure you have finally found morality. I'm sure today is the day all of your ethics changed. I mean, come on. How stupid do we have to be to believe that? That 2 years ago, Bob Stoops was in a completely different place in terms of what he decided to do, what was right with his players competitively and all of that. 2 years later, I'm a different guy. I would handle it totally differently. No, you wouldn't have. In fact, you wouldn't have even addressed this unless the video was made public. And that's the great irony in all of this, is that what do college coaches rely on more than anything? The film. Don't know, got to check the film. I didn't really see it, got to look at the film. Well, he really flashed on film. Well, what happened on film was Joe Mixon got to play for the Oklahoma Sooners over the last 2 seasons because we didn't have the film. And once we had the film, well, suddenly the narrative changed, and now Bob Stoops says, if we had this today, if this happened today, I would have dismissed him. No, you would not. No, you would not. I love college football. Absolutely love it. But there is something that boils into the narrative of college football that bothers me every time I read it or hear it. And myself in the media and all of us in the media, we bake it into the product so much so that we don't even really give it a second thought. And that is that coaches are there to develop young men. This you hear over and over and over again, whether it's a guy at a junior college or it's Mike Krzyzewski, whether it's Nick Saban or a guy at the lowest level of Division III. Every coach always says, well, I'm into developing young men. That's why I got into this. I wanted to teach and develop young men. And do I believe there's a lot of coaches that want to do that? Yes. Yes, I do. I'm not so cynical as to believe that doesn't exist at all. And do I even think there are some coaches that even in spite of winning want to develop young men? Yeah, I think there are some that do. They're few and far between, and they don't happen very much in Division I, if at all. They're certainly not at your power conference teams. They're certainly not your power programs. Those are not guys that are only into developing young men. Wins be damned. No. Not when your bowl payouts are tens of millions of dollars. Your college football television deals are hundreds of millions of dollars. When your salaries are $5, $6, $7 million, you're not only into developing young men, you're into winning football games. The problem is, all of these guys, every time they take a job or are asked about why they are in the profession, why they started, why they're in it, say it's about developing young men. Nobody ever says, I got to rush out of winning. The salary's really good. What else could I do where I would make $5 million a year? I like being a celebrity. I love big houses. Nobody ever says the real stuff. Nobody ever says, I'm a really competitive guy, and you know what? I want to be better than that guy across the sideline. It's always about developing young men. And when these coaches have chances to develop young men, it's almost always having to fit within the framework of winning the football games. It's never outside of that framework. So for Bob Stoops, yeah, I don't think that he wants Joe Mixon to be some type of drug addict. I don't think that he wants him to be some type of violent criminal. I don't think he's rooting for Joe Mixon to flame out in life. But for Bob Stoops, he is going to rationalize in his brain, well, we've got to have him play football, because if we don't have him play football, then we've cast him aside like the rest of society. Right? So that was his rationale 2 years ago. Well, we can't just cast him aside. I believe in second chances. But today, after we have video of it, Bob Stoops says, well, I would dismiss him. So the second chance thing and the developing young man thing doesn't factor in today. So it should never be taken seriously at this level, ever. And that's a shame because, again, I don't think Bob Stoops wants bad things to happen to his kids. I think naturally human beings, they find bonds and they develop friendships and relationships. And look, if you've got a kid that you're around for 4 years, you get to know him inevitably. You get to know his personality, his likes, his dislikes, what he can do on a football field. You might end up knowing his family. You've certainly recruited his family more than usually. If you have a high 4 or 5-star recruit, as the head coach, you normally meet those kids' families. A lot of the other recruiting might be done with the assistant coach, and you never have to actually go there. But, you obviously find some type of bond there. But giving kids second chances and developing young men only happens when the negatives around them helping you win games is finally too complicated. And that's what happened here. It just got too complicated. For Oklahoma, they could stomach Joe Mixon punching a girl as long as the video wasn't out. They could stomach it. They could find ways to rationalize it. They could find ways to excuse it. They could find ways even to morally suggest that they're helping him. We're not going to cast him aside. But when the video comes out, then they don't have the stomach or the appetite for it anymore. And that is the most bothersome thing about this, is that every time you hear them say, well, we believe in second chances, or we're developing young men, yet only to a certain degree. Only to a certain degree. And this goes back to why I'm so bothered by coaches like Mark Richt or Bruce Arians or anybody else complaining about Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette not playing in bowl games. It's so hypocritical. Because coaches are there to develop young men, right? We keep coming back to that. But when coaches get a better job, they don't have to stick around for their young men. They get to leave immediately. You know, if I was to believe you're developing young men, how about you stick around through their last football game? So that their crowning achievement that you say should be everything for their senior season, that you're there for it. You know, like what happens if my dad was like, yeah, you need to go to school, you need to get good grades, we demand everything out of you academically, you've got to graduate from college, and then on graduation day, he's like, yeah, I'm not around because I've got a day hanging out with my guy friends. I mean, well, one is a job. Yeah, well, you know what? You tell these kids this is a priority, and then you're not around for the priority. So it only works one way. We demanded a certain way out of the players, but not the coaches. Coaches are free to leave their team to the lurch on a bowl game. Players have to play. Coaches are about developing young men and giving them second chances until it complicates their football world. And then, well, we'll see. We'll make it up as we go along.